Hi everyone, and welcome to today's ink review. Today we're looking at an ink from Franklin Christoph. It is Urushi Red. This is a very cool ink. It's got a great sort of darker reddy brown sort of tone, almost a rusty sort of red, and yeah, it's a really lovely ink. Here it is in the bottle. It comes from Franklin Christoph. This is the 1 ounce bottle, which is roughly about 30 mils of ink. It costs about $8.25 US. This was purchased from the Franklin Christoph website directly, and yeah, I think it's a really classy ink. Here it is on some card, just basic sort of card stock. You can see that it's got some lovely sort of darker shading in the ink, and then that sort of more sort of I wouldn't say vibrant red, but a sort of a nice deep sort of rich red there at the top. Let's have a quick look at the chromatography here. As you can see, a lot of it moves around, so you get some nice sort of vibrant pinks and sort of lighter reds, and then a nice sort of dark red coming through, which I think is really evident in this ink. When you see the lighter shading, you don't get the pink necessarily, but you do get some nice sort of hints of some vibrancy, which is quite nice. Let's look at it on Rhodia now. So this is Rhodia 80 gram paper, just the regular. I've had this in 2 pens. First was a TWSBI Eco Broad, which you can see a lot of sort of the writing is in there. Nice sort of thick swab of it there as well, which I think is a lovely sense of some of that darker shading that comes through. And there's almost a hint of sheen, but it's sort of just shining as opposed to sheen really. As I said, it's a highly it's quite a nice saturated ink. It is a little dry perhaps. It's got some nice shading and no sheen in the writing. Then I also had it here in a Lamy extra fine nib, and you can see here that the Lamy actually makes a nice sort of lighter shade of the ink. When you're not putting quite so much down, you do get a bit more of the red and less of the brown, which I really do quite like. Now for a few comparisons here, we've got Franklin Christoph Urushi Red here, of course, and then Monteverde Mandarin Orange, which you can see is a little bit more orange there. Then we get Robert Oster Maroon 1789, sort of it ties in with some of the darker shades, and then just to show what a sort of a more vibrant red looks like against it, we've got Waterman Red there. I think it's the Audacious Red. So it is a sort of a browny red, sort of almost a rusty sort of colour, earthy terracotta brown. It's really nice, and I think that the shading on this ink is quite beautiful, but not sort of overbearing. You always get some saturation, as opposed to some inks when they shade you get a very light colour and the darker colour. These are all tied in, which is really cool. Let's look at it on some other paper. So starting from the top down, we have Tomoe River here in the Hobonichi book. Performs really well. There's no feather or bleed or anything, and it looks great on this paper, if a little sort of less saturated or less vibrant, but Tomoe River can do that to some inks. Below Rhodia, I just have some regular sort of office copy paper here, and you can see it still performs pretty well. There's very little bleeding. The colour is a little bit more washed out, and you get a little less shading, although there is some there to be seen. But it still looks really nice, and once again, it performs really well. These Franklin Christoph inks do perform really nicely. Next, we have it on like the cheap student note paper here, and here you do get a hint of feathering, ever so slightly occasionally. But not a lot. You can see occasionally with the Lamy extra fine, because it is a slightly dry ink, you do get a little bit of, I wouldn't say skipping, but it doesn't flow super heavy onto the page. And on the back, there's a little bit of bleed, but that's completely expected on this paper, but it does perform better than a lot of other inks. Just here on the Rhodia, we'll just flip it over, and you can see also here that there's no bleeding here at all coming through, except for, of course, with the swab, but we laid down a lot of ink. So let's do a water test now, and then we'll just do a basic little wrap up and sort of look at how the ink sort of goes with some sort of scoring. So I've just sort of dropped a bit of water on the page there. So while we're waiting for that to sort of have its effect, you can see it's already moving the ink around. Sheen, low to none. Shading is good. Shimmer, this is not a shimmering ink. Water will come back to. Bleed and feather is fair. As I said, only on the cheaper end do we actually see anything of note. Dry time is excellent, 15 to 20 seconds. Flow is good, cleaning is fair. These sort of darker red inks do tend to sort of linger around in pens, and there's no staining or anything like that, but cleaning, flushing it out, it can sort of remain for a while. So performance, I put good, and it is a good ink. It performs beautifully. There's been no sort of crudding up in the nib like a lot of sort of these darker colours. Something like Ancient Copper from Diamine will sort of crud up in the nib. Nothing like that here. In fact, here is the pen that it's been in, the Twisby, and you know, there's nothing hanging around in the nib or on the feed at all. So yeah, very, very happy with the performance of this ink. Okay, as I said, this ink is $8.25 American for 1 ounce, or about 30 mils. It's not bad value. The bottle is great. It's glass. It's got a nice sort of label. It's not a big bottle, but it's sort of sturdy on the table, and it's got a nice wide opening. So filling any pen from this is really no problem whatsoever. So it's good value. It's a good performing ink. Let's just quickly see it here on once we soak up some of this water. And as you can see, the water resistance, well, it's pretty low. It really is. You can see that from the chromatography. A lot of the ink is sort of soaked up. You get a little bit of a hint of pink left behind, but a lot of the detail is missing. So if you get water on this ink, you're not going to have a lot left. So yeah, I'd have to say water resistance here is low. And so yeah, as I think the performance of this ink is good. My personal take on this ink is a 4 out of 5. I really liked using it. I've had it in these pens for a couple of weeks. It's been really nice to sort of, see this ink on different paper because it performs so well across the board. So overall, I'm going to give this ink a 4 out of 5. I think it's an excellent ink and amazing value. $8.25 for a bottle, US for a bottle that size. You know, it's pretty good. I think you can, you know, it's roughly sort of half the price of a bottle of, say, Robert Oster or something like that. So I think I really have nothing to complain about with this ink. I think it's a really lovely ink. It's a really good color. There are lots of inks around this sort of color. As I said, something like the Mont Blanc Shakespeare or even Noodler's Chinaman, they will perform differently, of course, but in terms of the actual color, it's not unique necessarily, but I think it's a really nice color. So I hope you found this video useful. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Hit the notifications button if you want to stay up to date with the videos that I produce. Please feel free to get in touch using any of the platforms listed below. You can find me on Instagram or Twitter at @the_offstage_me. So yeah, get in touch with me over there. Drop me a message if there are products you think I should be looking at, or if you've got a way you'd like to support this channel, please let me know, and let's see what we can do. Let's keep the community sort of moving along and all engaging. So I hope you enjoyed this review of Franklin Christoph's ink Urushi Red, and I hope you enjoy your pens and your writing, and I'll talk to you later.